Welcome to Constructive Conversations, where we dig into all things related to construction, design, real estate, and the clients behind the projects.
Each series will discuss different verticals from hospitality to industrial. By touching on a wide variety of topics, we hope to help you avoid the common pitfalls of project delivery and create a roadmap to success.
We're your hosts, Mike Bruno
and Shelby Gasick.
We hope you enjoy the episode. Welcome back to another episode of Constructive Conversations, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of construction, design, and the people shaping our built environment. I'm Mike Bruno, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Shelby Gasick.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us again. Shelby Gasick with Stone Creek Construction Group. Excited to talk about restaurants and structural aspects behind them. We have with us today Joe with Structural Workshop LLC. Joe, you want to do a quick intro?
Sure. Thank you for having me. My name is Joe DiPompeo. I'm the owner and president of Structural Workshop. We've been in business for 21 years. We're headquartered in Mountain Lakes in North Jersey, and we also have an office in Pompano Beach, Florida. We work on all sorts of buildings and structures all over the country, and we've been in business for 21 years.
Great. So if you don't mind, just going to ask you a couple, background questions and a few questions on, why you got into the business. So first one would be, I saw that you have a civil engineering degree. What inspired you to get specifically into the structural engineering focus?
Construction, civil engineering kind of is in my blood. I grew up in a family of contractors and real estate developers, and I have pictures of me on an excavator as a toddler. And, when my friends were playing other things, I was digging holes and building bridges on the side of the yard. So that direction was kind of always there. And then I went to school for civil engineering, and my undergrad specialization was construction management. I was going to get into construction.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, when I started taking structural engineering classes, they just came incredibly easy to me with very little effort. I breezed through them with straight A's, and I said I have a talent for this, and I enjoyed it. It's not that I'm smarter than anyone else necessarily. There's plenty of classes I struggled through, like thermodynamics and other things, but those classes it came to me. So and I enjoyed it, so I continued with it and pursued a master's degree in structural engineering, and was off to the races.
Nice. So off of that, what led you to start Structural Workshop?
Well, I'm similarly to being a little odd and playing in the dirt while my friends were doing other things. I also have always been fiercely independent. I mean, I like to do all my projects in school by myself when everyone was in groups, because I thought I could do a better job and get it done quicker if I didn't have anyone interfering with me. So, kind of the theme here is what a weird kid I was, I guess. But I worked for a couple of years, and I was very, very lucky to have an engineer who was in his 70s at the time, and it was a small company, so I really, really picked up a lot in a couple of years, and felt I got 10 years of experience in 4 years. I had a brief opportunity where I didn't have any bills for a couple of months. And I knew that probably was going to be the only chance I would have to start something, because one of the hardest parts about starting a company is what do you do for salary during that transition period. So I was lucky and smart enough to realize that I had an opportunity to kind of put that aside for a few months, and I decided to take it and started the company in a closet in a condo basement. And went from there. So 21 years later, we're doing pretty well. It's been, for the most part, a steady growth for all that time. So,
yeah, that's great. Yeah, I find that ourselves included, you take the I guess the gamble, right, to just start a business. And fortunately, through some, I guess good choices and good paths that we've taken, we end up at the end of the day with successful businesses that continue to grow. But it is interesting how, you were mentioning like the childhood aspect of it, and I can definitely resonate with the same thing.
Yeah.
I always, tend to do the same type of things, like taking control of things as a smaller, child, and just kind of wanting to be, I guess, in charge of my own destiny, if you will.
Right.
You also did construction too, Mike, though, right?
Yeah.
At a young age. I know I did. So I think that's a parallel we probably all had. Yeah, I mean, I was installing my grandparents' gutters at probably age 10, and went on to do carpentry and masonry all through middle school and high school. Um, yeah, I think it's incredible being able to learn the trades and having that kind of logical engineering mindset going into life, right?
Yeah, and
Especially,
my my father was an entrepreneur and a contractor, and he was very busy, as I'm sure you guys are and I am. But
Yep.
one of the ways that he spent time with me was take me to work. So that was kind of, from when I was little through college, with varying degrees of success, getting me out of bed at 5 in the morning. But that was kind of the, get up and get to work. That showed me some work ethic, and also gave me an opportunity to see how business and construction works. And even when I was young and not really working, it was still just a good experience for work ethic and how things work. And to
sure. No,
Sure.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, my grandpa, who was probably one of my biggest influences when it came to my career and path in life, he was an engineer. He ultimately owned a ball bearing company, but he had a workshop in his house, and I would just tinker in there all the time. I spent a lot of time over at their place, and he was always putting me to work. But I also just had his full workshop full of tools, and
uh,
I'd be sanding down blocks or using the drill press or doing whatever, just learning how things functioned and getting an idea for kind of construction and tools. And
yeah.
it was a great influence, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just repaired some blocks in my stone wall earlier this morning too, so I'm still doing it. I
I
mean,
I have a 100+ year old house, and I'm elated on weekends when
yeah,
I finish what I have to do, and I can tinker and take care of the yard and fix things. And I've got wiring from 1920 till 6 months old, and everything in between.
yeah. Cabin too, still in there,
Every
active.
everything that you could possibly think to tinker with: mechanical, electrical, plumbing, structural, siding, painting. But that's what I enjoy. That's how I enjoy doing that, to get my mind off of the other stuff that's more serious, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
absolutely. No, because
Well,
it's solution based, right? Like
There's a
there is
reward
a way
when
to
you solve it,
solve,
right? Yeah.
yeah, these things, and I think probably similar personalities across the board here, but it feels really satisfying to get in and actually come up with a solution and fix something, right? So,
Yeah,
and having
absolutely.
the skill to be able to do that
Yeah.
is pretty rewarding. So, yeah.
so speaking of influence, are there buildings or other engineers that came long before us, that have influenced any of your work or thought process, or just that you find extremely interesting?
Well, I mean, I think I had a professor in college and grad school who was my advisor, and he really inspired my love of this, I would say. He was a great teacher and a great mentor, and really, yeah, inspired me to really love this and enjoy it. And also academically taught me. I don't think I could have gotten a better education.
Mhm.
And then I had a mentor, as I said, when I first started working, who kind of filled in the other piece of that with practical stuff. And you yeah, I got a master's degree in structural engineering. I was doing spreadsheets with 10,000 lines of equations and stuff, and that was great. But I went to work my first day and they said something about the studs, and I thought they were talking about wall studs, and they were talking about shear studs, which no one had even told me existed. So, I had some catching up to do on the practical stuff, and that was a nice combination of two very experienced, good mentors that filled in both pieces of what you
Mhm.
really need to know to be successful at this.
Yeah,
Sure.
that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely helps having a mentor through school that helps kind of guide you and you're close with. We talked about it on previous shows, but similar but opposite kind of path from you in some sense, where I went to school for architecture. And, throughout my educational career, I kind of realized that I would most likely go back into construction, kind of where I was as a kid growing up, because I like being a part of the tangible aspect of it. But I had some pretty good mentors through my college career too that did both, architecture and construction, and helped me, through that process. So
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, I learned how to design a steel beam, and it's a math exercise of 3 pages of math. But now, you almost look at it, and based on the size and span and what it's doing, you pretty much have an idea what it's going to be.
yeah,
You double check it, but that's 2 or 3 lines of punching something in a calculator with a couple shortcuts to make sure you're okay. But that's the bridge from school to reality. Um you can't come into the real world and spend the time and effort and precision that you do in school, in the real world. You need to find a way to safely find more efficient ways to do things. I don't want to say shortcuts because they're not. I mean, you're not cutting anything out. You're just
but it comes with
no,
experience. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. You're just
yeah,
knowing when you can disregard 80% of the calculation
right.
because
Yeah.
the way it's set up.
No, I mean, recently I did an addition on my house, and Mike and I do primarily commercial now. We do some residential as well, and we have, previously Mike had a residential company for a long time, but I'm going 2 feet below my existing footing, right, and small hairline crack starting to show on the foundation wall. And I'm getting nervous, of course, because it's my home, right? And Mike sends me pictures of houses that he stilted down at the Jersey Shore and said, "Don't even think about it. You're fine, right?" But
Every
that's
foundation has crack. I mean, we do a
yeah,
lot of assessments for real estate purposes, and the amount of foundations that we look at with cracks. And I tell people all the time, walk around the neighborhood. Almost every
oh,
house on
they're
the
everywhere.
block is going to have some degree of
Yeah,
cracking in it. Just 'cause
no,
it's cracked.
absolutely.
Cracks can certainly be a problem. They can certainly be a big problem, but just because you have them doesn't mean anything. Nobody notices them until someone points it out, the home inspector or somebody
Right.
else says you got a crack, and then all of a sudden they start looking and panicking. So I always tell people, walk around and look at other people's
Yeah.
foundations, relax a little
Well,
bit.
Yeah.
I buried mine in sheetrock, so no home inspector's going to see it. But either way, Mike,
Well,
I'm
between
just
what I just said and what you just said, we probably should run through our legal departments.
But Mike's experience in that particular situation, right? I mean, it's not something you learn in school. Jacking these houses up and stilting them, and going through the process of what a structure can sustain. Through this process, and here I was at my house with such something so minor, right? But it was making me anxious, and he reassured me, that wasn't an experience that I had yet. Then I poured a massive grade beam in front of it, like a 2x2, reinforced doweled in. So there's more concrete in this new footing holding back the house.
And then you have to kick it and say it ain't going anywhere, and that's it. It's done.
Yeah.
Right, right. But then also, my solution, and then that was something I just came up with on the fly, honestly, pouring that giant bulkhead in front of the existing footing and doweling into it. And, I felt completely confident in that solution, right? Yeah. So over 10 yards of concrete. I'm
So
also looking for you to say that's good, Joe. So
I'm not, yeah, I'm keeping my mouth shut, as you can see. Or this does not constitute engineering advice, so we got to put
yeah,
the disclaimer on it.
sure. No, but to tie it back to, one of the topics, right, of our podcast series here in terms of restaurants. I mean, one thing that I think is unique about restaurants is the amount of penetrations you have to do through a floor system, right? I mean, there's an incredible amount of floor sinks and drains and beverage lines running to bar systems and all these types of things. And, I think for some people, they could get nervous about doing 46 cores into a 5,000 square foot space.
Yeah,
And of course, there needs to be checks on that. You need to understand what type of structure it is, what type of slab it is. We've done them where they're reinforced concrete structures, and you need to understand where the rebar locations are and the tensile strength of those going back into the columns. And oftentimes we'll scan too, right? To look at those
absolutely. Yeah,
locations, try to
no, that was
avoid
a
rebar.
very
Yeah,
good listing of the concerns and issues. Obviously a ground up building, you can get stuff under the slab. You can, preform or pre-box all your openings. I mean, that really, in that situation, if you have a ground up building and it's a raised slab, the coordination is very important on the location of the openings and making sure your frames to support them, that the MEP and the kitchen designer and everyone involved agrees where that opening goes, how big it has to be, and what's going in it.
right.
Um, but a slab on grade in a new building is easy. You put everything under the
Yeah,
slab and just turn it up, and it doesn't matter how many holes you have. I mean, it becomes an issue if you have a bad soil. You have to have a pile supported slab or something like that, and obviously a retrofit. I mean, we've seen projects where they start cutting a slab on grade that they think is a slab on grade, and turns out there's a 2 foot void under it, and it's a pile supported slab, and the ground sunk 2 feet. I've seen that in the Meadowlands area several times for things.
wow.
But one time where they literally cut the slab to Swiss cheese, and the pieces were just hanging, ready to just fall. So stitching that back together was not fun. We had to expose all the rebar, put couplers on it, and basically kind of rebuild it with what was there.
Yeah,
Um, but after the fact, doing that on a raised slab too can be very tricky, especially some of these buildings in Manhattan that have interesting structural systems from years ago, terracotta and brick arch floors, flat arch floors. I mean, we've seen all kinds of things through the years, and it's not and reinforced concrete too. I mean, it's, as you said, finding the rebar. It's very rare you're going to have drawings for reinforced concrete building. Finding the rebar, figuring out what's doing what, making sure that uh, it's just a slab and not part of the lateral system or something else.
sure.
It can get quite complicated, and that's also for trying to put any kind of new equipment, rooftop units or partitions or anything onto a reinforced concrete structure that you don't have the drawings for. I mean, it's 5 to 10 times the fee usually on our end to assess that, as opposed to like an open web joist roof or something that you want to put an opening in. It's a big difference. So people ask about pricing on stuff like that all the time, and I tell them the biggest factor is the what's there. If it's open web joist and I have drawings, it's very easy. If it's
Yeah, yeah,
reinforced concrete and no drawings, that's the other end of the spectrum.
sure. No, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, fortunately we haven't encountered any settling of soil underneath slabs yet for a restaurant project. We're doing one in Harrison now, which was a slab on grade condition, and that was relatively easy, right? But we've done other buildings that are multi-story buildings, semi-high rises, mid-rise buildings, and yeah, it certainly gets more complicated in that scenario, and want to try to stay out of those column lines, right, where the rebar is tying back in, and yeah, it gets more tricky. So we've also done what you were just discussing in terms of roof conditions too. We see it more in the pharmaceutical, life science sectors where we're putting large RTUs and equipment on the roof systems, and need to either reinforce footings for columns to then post up and all that type of thing. But being able to see and understand the structure is definitely a huge advantage. So
Yeah.
Yeah, so with all of that said, and kind of in line with what we're just talking about, in your experience, is it difficult to have alignment with the architectural design and the structural design? And maybe for some folks that, will be listening to this and they're planning a project, I guess maybe just walk through a little bit of that process and how important it is to have, early structural engineering involvement in a project to see if there's any design limitations and or, floor plan changes due to some conditions that come up.
Yeah, it's helpful to have general guidance from the engineer prior to laying out things, because it's not so much a matter of feasibility. Generally, you can do anything you want. It's just a matter of how much it's going to cost and how complicated it is. And generally, there's much simpler and cheaper places to locate
Yeah.
things than others. So if you lay the whole thing out without even thinking about that, then you might have problems when the engineer gets to it and tries to work with that layout. If you at least have some input and try to conform to the engineer's suggestions as best as you can, it should make it simpler and less expensive to actually execute. So it's having those type of coordination issues is nothing new or nothing unusual. They happen all the time. It's one of the things that everyone on the design team should be working to avoid. But I've seen them get quite complicated, and I've seen architects get stuck in the middle of the MEP engineer saying I have to put it here, and the structural saying you can't put it there, and it's a question of, are you running extra ductwork? Are you adding an extra unit? Or, sometimes the MEP ramifications can get pretty significant by having to relocate something, because you might need to put a different unit in, an additional unit, or X amount of feet of ductwork, which costs X amount of dollars. So it can get out of hand if you don't get on top of it early. I definitely agree with that.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. We just did a cannabis packaging facility in Linden. And, I think the MEP probably designed it first and laid out these, rooftop units kind of in the center of each one of the spaces, which didn't necessarily correlate with the major structure.
Mhm.
Um, so we went in, and instead of reinforcing every single joist, which isn't a lot in terms of cost of material, but pretty labor intensive,
Labor intense, a lot of welding. Yep.
a lot of welding,
Yep.
right? We suggested to shift those units closer to the main grid of the steel structure, so that one side of the RTU, or maybe it was even sitting on top of one of the beams, and the supply and the return duct were dropping on other side of that steel, and ended up reducing the cost, I think, by a significant amount, like 7 times less,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
To do it that way. And I think that could have been an example of kind of a miscoordination on the MEPs and the architects just going at it first. But it's always good to look at it together and come up with the best solution.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We had a very similar, like 2 weeks ago, issue on a project where it's an existing building. It's a retail, and they're converting it to a different retail, but they put in a bunch of MEP units, and we said you should move them or the structure is going to get complicated. And they said we don't want to go back to the MEP. We don't want to involve him again. I don't know what the reason was on their end, but 3 weeks later, why do we have $100,000 change order? And the answer was because you didn't
Yeah.
move the rooftop units like we said.
Yeah.
They made a couple phone calls and called us back a couple hours later and said we're moving the rooftop units, and that was
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah. They thought it would have
absolutely
been that.
understand that 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it happens. Definitely. I mean, but that's a part of the process, right? And every, Mike and I probably do 5 to 7 design build projects a year. And we do, when we have the opportunity, recommend that to a client, even if we're kind of doing the dreaded free con portion of it, where we just get eyes on the project as progress sets are getting released, just so we can pick up potential items that we can value engineer, or help work towards reducing cost on, or better solutions. I think it's a good idea to have everybody involved, the architect, MEP engineer, structural, civil and the general contractor at
And it's
times.
easier now with all the collaboration tools and screen sharing and document sharing and Revit models and not that you have all that stuff on every project, but it's different from years ago having to get everyone to a meeting and lay out paper plans and figure it out. I mean, now there's so many tools and ways to coordinate and collaborate that it should be much simpler and done much more often.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's true.
absolutely.
So along those lines, what are some of the biggest challenges facing the structural engineering world these days?
Well, the job market has been tough. I mean, there's definitely a lack of candidates, so that's more of a business thing. The big thing in structural engineering in general is this move from the building code is and regulations are starting to address existing buildings in a way they haven't in the past, with very few exceptions. Once you built a building and got a CO, the code official, the regulations, other than basic life safety and fire kind of stuff, was done with you.
Sure.
New York City has had local law 11 for a while for facade inspections to make sure pieces of buildings aren't falling from 30 stories up and killing people because that happened. There was some stuff in South Florida. Obviously, it wasn't properly enforced, leading to what happened in Surfside. But since then, there's been a real push, and New Jersey is kind of leading the way on this. Florida has made statewide requirements, and there's a couple cities in New Jersey that have their own requirements. But there's also statewide requirements for all condo buildings in New Jersey to have structural inspections and reserve studies, and this is only going to grow and spread to different states, different locations, different types of buildings. New York City is requiring parking garage inspections now on all existing parking garages. So, and facade inspections too. Every street facing facade in New York City has to get inspected every single year now. So there's it just keeps growing, and I think I'm generally not a fan of regulation and over regulation, but some of this stuff does make sense because there's nobody watching, and it's not something that's just going to affect the building owner. If they want to take the risk and have an economic loss, that's their problem. But you have a parapet falling on the sidewalk and killing somebody. That's you should be able to walk down the sidewalk without having to worry about that. So
Sure. Sure. So from a systematic perspective, how do you guys approach that type of inspection? Let's say of a condo or a parking garage. Is it purely visual? Is it obtaining documents beforehand? What is the typical process of that?
sure. Well, I mean, some of the regulations have specific requirements. The parking garage inspection in the city has very specific requirements, and you have to file it on DOB now, and you have to answer specific questions and upload specific things. So that's kind of dictated to you. Um, New Jersey references an ASCE standard for condition assessment of buildings, and there's also a facade condition assessment standard ASCE puts out. So, I mean, in general, I mean, we've done these types of things for a very long time, not just starting now. In general, you start with the least intrusive, least expensive, least disruptive. So that's generally visual. So yeah, we review documents. There's some cases where we'd send out surveys to residents to uncover who's got leaks, who's got drafts, who's got windows that don't work, to kind of get a starting point.
Mhm.
We'll review whatever documents there are, which sometimes is nothing, and sometimes it's voluminous. And then we'll do a visual. Sometimes that's binoculars. You can do a drone. You can go out on balconies. You walk the whole building, and many cases that will be enough. You'll see enough to know everything's good. There's other cases where it's not, and that's just the first step. And then you can put together a selective demo, probing, testing program from there. Once you do the visual, what you would do varies tremendously on the type of building, type of construction, the age, the exposure. Obviously, a reinforced concrete building on the water is on the ocean is going to be
Yeah.
different from a wood building in Kansas. So, and believe it or not, the wood building in Kansas certainly have to worry about tornadoes probably there, which you weren't
Yeah.
thinking when I said that, but there's really no design standard for tornadoes. If we had to design every building for tornadoes, they'd be 100 times the cost they are and be basements basically. There is a standard for community shelters and tornado shelters. So basically a room you can go to, but buildings on the coast that are exposed to salt air, the specially reinforced concrete, uh, it's a whole different set of things you're looking for. So
Yeah. Yeah, true. So as we're wrapping up here, one last question for you surrounding AI and engineering and your thoughts on any impact to the industry. Is it helpful? Is it doing anything for you guys at this point? Is it, trusted enough to implement
uh,
in any design?
I'm playing around with it on the more on the business end with email and we've used it to parse through emails to make a list of everyone that emailed about a marketing thing or something or we've been playing around with that with varied success. We've been trying to use it to some shortcuts and save time on things. I haven't been tremendously impressed with Copilot. It doesn't seem to do the things that I hear, the cutting edge things I hear on the news that AI is doing, but I'm assuming they'll catch that up at some point. Um,
Sure.
but there is in terms of specific to engineering, there is someone has put out like a search engine that's AI powered that searches through journals and databases and things related to engineering. I've used that a bit to look up stuff. I don't really see it doing anything different than Google does now. I think it's just it's specific to engineering, so you're only going to get answers from sources that are pre-vetted, which is nice. And I guess the AI helps the search a little bit, but it's really no different than doing searching for something. So
Mhm.
um, design, no, I don't think it's there yet. I mean, you certainly could put something together to go through the steps of designing a simple structure, but it's going to be a while until you can just trust that, I think you still need a human involved.
Yeah. Has there been any discussion, at a licensing level, the rules and regulations that you need to follow as a professional engineer with regards to utilizing any of these things that are out there?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, there very well could be. I know, there's certainly with contracts and legal and risk management, this is a hot topic.
Mhm.
Yes, this everything we do is related to the standard of care. That's kind of what we're measured against,
Sure.
and this is going to shift the standard of care somehow. I don't know exactly how yet, but um, the standard of care is what other similar engineers practicing on a similar project in a similar locality are doing. That's kind of the how the law defines what we have to do. So when you have a new technology like this, if no one's using it yet, then it's really not part of the standard of care. But
Right.
the first 25% of people that are using it, they're using it, but it's really not part of the standard of care because the other 75% of engineers aren't using it. So I think it's a very good point. I mean, licensing, ethics, and risk management and legal is a huge factor other than the technical aspects of it. So
Sure. Yeah, and I guess at the end of the day, it ultimately falls down to, or it falls into that bucket of it's a tool, right? But it's the
yeah,
engineer that's utilizing that tool and doing the final review and stamping the drawing or, whatever it may be that has the responsibility to double check and make sure everything's accurate.
yeah. Right now, that's how we're looking at it, is something to help us be more efficient, save some time. Someday, maybe you just push a button and it does it for you, but I think we're a long way off, but a long way in AI time is not necessarily as long as you think. It seems to be rapidly developing it. So.
Yeah, true. All right, good. Well, thank you very much for your time, Joe.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank you for
it.
having
Enjoyed
me.
the conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for digging into your background and structural engineering a little bit more. Greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to Constructive Conversations. Please subscribe and follow us on your favorite podcast platform.
Follow us on social media and visit our website at constructiveconversationspodcast.com.